Go, Will Jordan on top of the rostrum, ready for them at the entrance to the back straight. A steady approach for the half dozen at present. They're off, jumping away for the Weatherbys and Birdie calendars, Conditional, Jockeys, Handicap, Chase and Moonlight Artist, and the black and gold diamonds leads them to the first of 20 scheduled fences. The grey, of course I can, Handy, followed over by Lockout in the black and white. Now Blackacre made quite a serious mistake at the first, and Ellis Collier is in trouble with his irons. He lost his left iron. He's got it swiftly back, and the second fence is coming up quickly, and of course I can is striding on. Testflight in the blue and yellow was a little bit awkward there in fourth place. Esperti is the early back marker, and of course I can is stretching the field out, going to the open ditch, the third. There'd be 15 lengths first to last. Of course I can over Moonlight Artist. Testflight took a chance, and Esperti in rear was jumping out to his right. So they're well spaced out, turning on down the side of the course to the spread fence. Of course I can over Moonlight Artist. Despite a couple of erratic early leaps, Testflight is just third now, ahead of Lockout. Black and White Silks in fourth place, and then Blackacre last but one, and finally Esperti as the grey, of course I can, brings them into the straight for the first time at the end of half a mile. On towards fences 5 and 6, of course I can over Moonlight Artist. Testflight away to the left and Lockout on the right, jumping straight and true. And then Blackacre, and lastly the nose-banded Esperti on to the fence which ultimately is scheduled to become their last. Fence 6 on this occasion. Of course I can, jumping soundly, if a little out to the right, and giving a lead to his 5 rivals as they prepare to embark upon 2 further complete circuits. Testflight edging up into second around the outer of Moonlight Artist, and Lockout right down on the inner of that pair. And then a small break to Blackacre and Esperti as they turn along the side of the course and head on to fence 7. Of course I can and Bradley Harris leading Moonlight Artist and Ben Bromley. Testflight, Ciaran O'Shea, the blue and yellow, with a fairly wide trip. Lockout conversely under Ryan Corcoran, cutting every corner thus far. And then Blackacre and Ellis Collier and Esperti and Shane Fenelon at the back of the field. And just shortened up going into that one, put himself right in last place, Esperti. As of course I can, leaves them at the end of a circuit. Back across the far side they go. Over Testflight, the shadow to Moonlight Artist, Lockout in fourth. Then Blackacre and Esperti. Of course I can, continuing to jump boldly in front. And just beginning to string the field out once again. 8 lengths first to last, moving on towards fence 9. Of course I can. Out to the right once more. Over Testflight and Moonlight Artist, then Lockout, Blackacre, Black Jacket, after a first fence blunder, has been patiently ridden to regain confidence. And Esperti remains last. The open ditch for the second time. Of course I can. Testflight stretching for it when disputing second with Moonlight Artist. Lockout is 3 lengths away in fourth place. Another couple to Blackacre, who has Esperti at his quarters. On down the side of the course they go towards fence 11. Of course I can. Continuing to shift right-handed at the fences, but jumping soundly enough. Over Testflight and Moonlight Artist. The second half of the field being led by Lockout in advance of Blackacre and Esperti. Into the straight once again. The fences 12 and 13 now await them before a further complete circuit. And of course I can has been setting pretty even fractions so far, and remains a couple of lengths up on Testflight and Moonlight Artist. Lockout with the white cap still fourth, and then Blackacre and Esperti. They're bearing down on the 13th. Of course I can comes up well. Testflight, Lockout through the top, just in behind Moonlight Artist, and the final pair remain Esperti and Blackacre, as of course I can leads them under the judge and into the next left-hander. But they're beginning to group up in behind the pace setter here. The other 5 now tightly concertinaed. Moonlight Artist on the inner of Testflight, second and third respectively, stalked in turn by Lockout. And then Blackacre and Esperti firmly in touch, although still last of the 6 as they move on towards fence 14. Less than a mile to travel now. And of course I Can leading Testflight and Moonlight Artist down at the rail. Lockout is yet to be played into the race. Of course I Can jumping soundly. Esperti in last place, not for the first time. Had to put himself right and lost a little ground going into the fence. And now they head off across the far side, and the line of 3 fences awaiting them across there once again. Of course I Can to Testflight, Moonlight Artist, the black and gold. Lockout a couple of lengths away in 4th, and then a similar margin to Blackacre and Esperti. Heading towards the middle one over on the far side then. And still, of course I Can, who's made much of the running, continuing to jump out to his right, but a couple of lengths up on Testflight, Moonlight Artist. Lockout has come under pressure as the nose-banded Esperti and Blackacre begin to make progress. The open ditch at the end of the back straight, of course I Can, with now 5 of them right on his tail. Esperti, widest of all, fairly breezing into it, coming right through to dispute second with Testflight. Moonlight Artist bustled along against the rail, then Blackacre, and Lockout just a little outpace last of the 6. Over the 3rd last, of course I Can. Chased now towards the top of the straight by Esperti, and Lockout has stumbled and come down on the bend when just about in touch. So drama on the bend, as of course I Can leads Esperti towards the 2nd last. Testflight in the blue and yellow, rallying in 3rd, then Blackacre and Moonlight Artist. 2 out, looming up for the grey, of course I Can. Esperti a length down, Testflight on the left with a chance, running down between the final 2 fences. Of course I Can, grinding away. Esperti now shaken up firmly, trying to get on terms. Then Testflight, here's the last, of course I Can, joined by Esperti. Testflight a jolting blunder. Esperti, and of course I Can, locking horns. Of course I Can, game will not be denied. Of course I Can, a gutsy display to beat Esperti. Close 3rd between Testflight and Blackacre, and then Moonlight Artist.